The morning sun cast long shadows across the grounds of Windsor Castle as William stood at the tall windows of his private study. His hands were clasped behind his back, and his usually steady composure showed the first signs of strain that had been building for weeks. The royal doctors had delivered their final assessment the night before, and the words still echoed in his mind like a bell that refused to stop ringing. Kate entered the room quietly, her footsteps soft against the Persian carpet that had been in the royal family for generations. She carried 2 cups of tea, steam rising from the delicate china that bore the family crest. Her face was pale, but her eyes held the same determination that had carried them through countless challenges over their years together. "The children are asking questions," she said softly, setting his cup on the mahogany desk that had once belonged to his grandfather. "George keeps wondering why we've been so quiet lately, and Charlotte noticed that I've been crying when I think no one is looking." William turned from the window, and Kate could see the weight of responsibility that had always been his burden now seemed almost too heavy to bear. The future king was facing something that no amount of royal training could have prepared him for. The woman he loved, the mother of his children, the one person who had made the isolation of royal life bearable, was fighting a battle that even the best medical care in the world could not win. "What did you tell them?" he asked, his voice hoarse from the sleepless nights they had both endured. "That sometimes grown-ups have difficult things to work through, and that we would explain everything when we were ready," Kate replied, moving closer to him. "But, William, they're smart children. They can sense that something is very wrong." The past 3 months have been a whirlwind of specialist appointments, second opinions, and experimental treatments that had taken them to the most renowned medical facilities across Europe and America. Kate had faced each procedure with the same grace she brought to her royal duties, never complaining, never allowing the public to see her fear. But in the privacy of their home, away from the cameras and the constant scrutiny, she was simply a woman who wanted more time with her family. Their love story had begun at the University of St. Andrews, where young William had been instantly drawn to the confident, intelligent girl from Berkshire who treated him like any other student. Kate Middleton had no idea that the polite young man in her art history class would one day be her husband, or that their romance would be followed by millions around the world. Their relationship had weathered the storms of intense media attention, brief separations, and the enormous pressure of public life. When William had proposed with his mother's engagement ring during a romantic trip to Kenya, Kate had said yes, not just to marriage, but to a life of service that would require her to give up much of her privacy and freedom. She had embraced her role as the Duchess of Cambridge with enthusiasm, becoming a champion for mental health awareness, early childhood development, and photography. The British public had fallen in love with her warmth, her genuine interactions with people from all walks of life, and her ability to modernize the monarchy while respecting its traditions. The diagnosis had come as a shock during what should have been a routine medical checkup. Kate had mentioned feeling unusually tired, something she had initially attributed to the busy schedule of royal engagements and raising 3 young children. The doctors had run tests, then more tests, each one revealing results that no one had wanted to see. "The oncologist wants to discuss the timeline again," William said, taking Kate's hand in his. Her fingers were still elegant, still wore the sapphire ring that had once belonged to Princess Diana, but they felt frielier than they used to. "Dr. Henderson believes we should prepare ourselves for a matter of months, not years." Kate nodded, having expected this conversation. She had done her own research, had spoken privately with other patients who had faced similar diagnoses, and had come to terms with what lay ahead. But knowing something intellectually and facing it emotionally were 2 very different things. "I want to make this time count," she said firmly. "I don't want to spend whatever time we have left hiding away or pretending this isn't happening. I want the children to have beautiful memories. I want to continue our work as much as possible. And I want the public to know the truth when the time is right." William's eyes filled with tears he had been holding back for days. "How are you so brave? How are you thinking about everyone else when you're the one who's—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Because that's what we do," Kate replied simply. We've been blessed with an extraordinary life, with the ability to make a difference, with 3 wonderful children, and with more love than most people experience in several lifetimes. I won't let this disease take away the gratitude I feel for all of that." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of children's laughter echoing through the corridors. George, Charlotte, and Louis were home from school, and their voices brought both joy and heartbreak to their parents' ears. How do you tell an 11-year-old that his mother might not be there to see him become a teenager? How do you explain to a 9-year-old girl who idolizes her mother that life sometimes isn't fair? How do you help a 6-year-old understand something that adults struggle to comprehend? "We'll tell them this weekend," Kate decided. "When we're at Sandringham, away from London, away from the staff, somewhere they feel safe and comfortable." William squeezed her hand. "Together? Always together," she confirmed. The next few days passed in a blur of normal activities that felt anything but normal. Kate attended a charity event for her photography project, smiling for cameras and engaging with young photographers who had no idea they were meeting someone who was counting her remaining public appearances. William carried out his royal duties with his usual professionalism, but those who knew him well noticed the slight tremor in his voice when he spoke about future plans. Their private secretary, Simon, had been informed of the situation and was quietly beginning to adjust their schedules for the coming months. Fewer international trips, more family time, and a gradual reduction in Kate's public engagements that could be attributed to wanting to spend more time with the children. The palace had become expert at managing information, and, for now, Kate's condition remained known only to a very small circle of family and trusted staff. On Thursday evening, they sat in the nursery watching Louis practice reading from his favorite picture book. His small voice carefully sounded out each word, his finger tracing the letters as Kate had taught him. Charlotte was working on a watercolor painting at the small table by the window, occasionally asking for advice about which colors to mix. George was sprawled on the carpet with his homework, periodically sighing dramatically about mathematics problems. "Mummy, will you help me with this part?" Louis asked, holding up the book and pointing to a particularly difficult word. Kate moved from her chair to sit beside him on the floor, wrapping her arm around his small shoulders. "Let's sound it out together," she said, her voice warm and patient. "Remember what we practiced about breaking big words into smaller pieces?" As she helped her youngest son with his reading, William watched from across the room and tried to memorize every detail of the moment. The way Kate's hair fell across her shoulder as she leaned over the book. The concentrated expression on Louis's face as he worked through the challenging words. The comfortable silence between Charlotte's questions about her painting. The scratch of George's pencil against his notebook paper. These were the moments that mattered most, William realized. Not the state dinners, or the royal tours, or the ceremonial duties that would continue long after Kate was gone. These quiet evening scenes, these ordinary interactions between a mother and her children, these were the memories that would sustain them all in the difficult times ahead. "I think we should plan a special trip," Kate announced suddenly, causing all 3 children to look up at her with interest. "Somewhere we've never been together as a family. What do you think? Can we go somewhere warm?" Charlotte asked hopefully. "Somewhere we can swim and build sandcastles? And can we stay in a hotel with room service?" George added, grinning at the thought of ordering ice cream for breakfast. "Can we bring the dogs?" Louis wanted to know, always concerned about their beloved pets. Kate laughed, the sound more precious to William than any symphony he had ever heard. "We'll see what we can arrange," she promised. "But yes, I think we should definitely go somewhere warm and beautiful, just the 5 of us." Later that night, after the children had been tucked into bed with stories and kisses, William and Kate walked through their private gardens in comfortable silence. The autumn air was crisp, and Kate pulled her cardigan closer around her shoulders. They had walked this path hundreds of times over the years, sometimes discussing royal duties, sometimes planning for their children's futures, sometimes simply enjoying each other's company after long days of public obligations. "Do you remember our first official engagement together?" Kate asked as they passed the rose garden where they often brought visiting dignitaries. "The lifeboat naming ceremony," William replied immediately. "You were so nervous about the protocol, and I kept telling you that you would be fine, that people would love you. And you were right," Kate said with a small smile. "Though I'm not sure either of us imagined it would lead to all of this." She gestured toward the castle, toward the life they had built together. "I never imagined I would be so happy," William said quietly. "Before you, I thought duty and happiness were two separate things. You taught me that I could serve and be fulfilled at the same time." They stopped walking and faced each other in the moonlight. Kate reached up to touch his face, tracing the lines that had appeared over their years together, the evidence of laughter and worry and the weight of responsibility he had carried since birth. "Promise me something," she said softly. "Anything. When this becomes public and people want to focus on the sadness of it all, help them remember the joy too. Help them remember that we had an incredible love story, that we were blessed with amazing children, that we made a difference in the world. Don't let my legacy be defined by how it ends." William pulled her close, holding her as if he could somehow protect her from what was coming simply through the force of his love. "Your legacy will be defined by how you lived," he whispered into her hair. "By your kindness, your strength, your dedication to making the world better for others. By being an amazing mother and the best partner anyone could ask for." As they stood together in the garden where they had shared so many moments over the years, both of them knew that they were beginning a journey unlike anything they had faced before. There would be difficult conversations with their children, painful decisions about treatment options, and, eventually, the challenge of sharing their private struggle with a world that felt entitled to every detail of their lives. But, for now, in this moment, they were simply William and Kate, two people who had found extraordinary love in extraordinary circumstances, facing an ordinary tragedy with grace and determination. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they had each other, they had their beautiful children sleeping safely upstairs, and they had the strength that comes from knowing that some things are more powerful than even the most devastating diagnosis. The drive to Sandringham had always been one of Kate's favorite journeys. The familiar countryside rolling past the windows, the children's excited chatter about spending time at their grandmother's estate, and the sense of escape from the formal protocols of London life. This time, however, the autumn landscape seemed to mirror the weight in her heart as she watched the golden leaves falling from the trees. George sat beside her in the back seat, absorbed in a book about military history that reminded her painfully of William at that age. Charlotte was sketching in her art pad, occasionally holding up drawings for approval, while Louis dozed against his window, exhausted from a full day at school. William drove in comfortable silence, his hands steady on the steering wheel despite the conversation they both knew was waiting for them. Queen Elizabeth had been told about Kate's diagnosis the week before, and the meeting had been one of the most difficult conversations of Kate's life. The monarch, who had weathered countless storms and personal tragedies during her long reign, had listened with the composed dignity that had defined her entire life. But Kate had seen the flash of pain in the older woman's eyes, the slight tremor in her hands as she processed the news. "You must take whatever time you need," the Queen had said firmly. "The royal duties will wait. Your children and your health are what matter now." It was the first time Kate had ever heard the Queen put personal needs ahead of royal obligations, and the gesture had meant more to her than any formal honor or title ever could. The estate at Sandringham was quiet when they arrived, the staff having been given the weekend off to ensure the family complete privacy. William carried their bags while Kate helped the children settle into their familiar rooms. This house held some of their happiest memories as a family. Christmas mornings with torn wrapping paper covering the floor, long summer evenings playing games in the garden, cozy winter afternoons reading by the fire. "Can we have hot chocolate before dinner?" Louis asked hopefully, still groggy from his nap in the car. "With marshmallows?" Charlotte added, looking up from unpacking her art supplies. "I think that sounds like an excellent plan," Kate agreed, grateful for these normal moments, these simple requests that she could still fulfill. They gathered in the small sitting room that evening, the fire crackling warmly as they sipped their hot chocolate and played card games. George was winning at crazy eights. much to his siblings' dismay, while Lewis kept forgetting which cards he was supposed to keep secret. Charlotte had appointed herself the official scorekeeper, writing everyone's points in careful handwriting on a piece of paper. "Tomorrow I want to show you the new foal in the stables," William told them. "She was born last month, and she's already showing signs of being quite the character. Can we name her?" Charlotte asked excitedly. "I think the stable manager has already given her a proper name," William replied, "but perhaps we could give her a family nickname." As the evening progressed, Kate found herself studying each of her children's faces, trying to memorize their expressions, the sound of their laughter, the way Charlotte tucked her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, how George's eyes lit up when he was about to play a winning card, the way Lewis's tongue poked out slightly when he was thinking hard. After the children had gone to bed, William and Kate sat by the dying fire, each lost in their own thoughts. The house was perfectly quiet except for the occasional settling sound of old wood and the distant hooting of an owl in the ancient trees that surrounded the estate. "I keep thinking about that first Christmas we spent here as an engaged couple," Kate said softly. "Remember how nervous I was about getting the gift exchange, right? I spent weeks trying to figure out the perfect presents for everyone." William smiled at the memory. "And you gave my grandmother that beautiful photo album of our travels together. She still keeps it on her desk." "I was so worried about fitting in, about proving that I belonged here," Kate continued. "I never imagined that one day this would feel more like home than anywhere else in the world." "You didn't have to prove anything," William told her, reaching for her hand. "You belonged here from the moment you said yes. The family knew it, I knew it, and somehow you made all of us better just by being yourself." Saturday morning dawned clear and cold, perfect weather for the conversation they could no longer postpone. They decided to take the children for a walk through the estate after breakfast, choosing a path that would lead them to Kate's favorite spot overlooking the lake, where she had often gone to think during particularly challenging periods of royal life. George ran ahead with the dogs, throwing sticks and laughing as the spaniels raced to retrieve them. Charlotte collected interesting leaves for her nature journal, while Lewis demanded to be carried when his shorter legs grew tired. It was a perfectly ordinary family outing, the kind they had enjoyed hundreds of times before. When they reached the bench by the lake, Kate suggested they sit down to rest and enjoy the view. The water was still and mirror-like, reflecting the clear blue sky and the bare branches of the trees. Ducks glided peacefully across the surface, occasionally diving for fish or preening their feathers. "This is one of Mummy's very favorite places," Kate began, her voice carefully steady. "It's where I come when I need to think about important things or when I want to feel peaceful." The children settled beside their parents on the bench, sensing from the serious tone in their mother's voice that something significant was about to be discussed. George, being the eldest, was the first to pick up on the gravity of the moment. "Are you going to tell us why you and Papa have been sad lately?" he asked directly, his young face showing a maturity beyond his years. Kate took a deep breath, drawing strength from the beautiful surroundings and from William's steady presence beside her. "Yes, darling. Papa and I have something very important to talk to you about, and we want you to know that no matter what we tell you, nothing will change how much we love you or how proud we are of all of you." She paused, choosing her words carefully. How do you explain terminal illness to children? How do you tell them that their mother is going to die without destroying their sense of security and hope? "Sometimes people get sick in ways that doctors can't fix," she continued gently. "You know how when you have a cold, you take medicine and rest, and then you feel better? Well, I have a different kind of sickness, one that the doctors are doing their best to help with, but it's the kind that doesn't go away." Charlotte's eyes immediately filled with tears, though she didn't fully understand what her mother was telling her. Lewis looked confused, glancing between his parents as if trying to decode a conversation that was beyond his comprehension. George sat very still, his young mind working to process information that seemed impossible to accept. "Are you going to die?" George asked bluntly, the question hanging in the air like a physical presence. Kate's heart broke at the directness of the question, at the fear in her son's voice, at the realization that she was about to shatter his childhood sense that parents are permanent fixtures who will always be there. "Eventually, yes," she said quietly, "but not right away. The doctors think I have several months, maybe longer, to spend with all of you. And I want to make sure that those months are filled with as much love and joy and normal family time as possible." William cleared his throat, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm him as he watched his children struggle to understand what they were being told. "What Mummy is trying to say is that we're going to have to be very brave together, all of us. We're going to continue doing all the things we love to do as a family. And we're going to make sure we tell each other how much we love each other every single day." Charlotte climbed into Kate's lap, burying her face against her mother's shoulder. "But I don't want you to be sick," she whispered. "I don't want to be sick either, my darling," Kate replied, stroking her daughter's hair. "But sometimes things happen that we can't control, and the important thing is how we handle them. We can choose to be angry and sad all the time, or we can choose to be grateful for the time we have and make the most of it." Lewis, not fully grasping the conversation, but sensing the emotional weight of the moment, simply moved closer to his parents and leaned against William's arm. His innocence was both heartbreaking and somehow comforting, a reminder that life would continue, that there would still be moments of joy and normalcy even in the midst of tragedy. "Will you still be able to come to my football matches?" George asked practically, his mind already jumping to the specific impacts this news might have on his life. "For as long as I'm feeling well enough, absolutely," Kate assured him. "And Papa will always be there, even when I can't be." They sat by the lake for a long time, talking through the children's questions, addressing their fears, and beginning the process of adjusting to their new reality. Kate explained that some days she might be tired and need to rest more than usual. William talked about how they would continue to be a family, how they would support each other, and how it was okay to feel sad or angry or scared about what was happening. "Will people know?" Charlotte asked. "Will it be in the newspapers?" This was one of the aspects of their situation that Kate dreaded most. Their family had always tried to maintain some privacy, especially when it came to protecting their children from excessive media attention. But she knew that eventually her condition would become public knowledge, and they would need to navigate the intense scrutiny that would follow. "Eventually people will find out," Kate explained. "But for now, this is just between our family and a few people who help take care of us. When we're ready, we'll tell people ourselves, so that they hear the truth from us instead of guessing or making up stories." "But why would people want to know about something so private?" George asked, showing the same protective instincts that would serve him well as a future king. "Because people care about our family," William answered. "Sometimes that caring can feel overwhelming, but most people mean well. They'll want to know because they love Mummy too, in their own way." As they walked back to the house, the children processed the information at their own pace. Charlotte stayed close to Kate's side, occasionally reaching for her hand. George walked quietly, clearly deep in thought about everything they had discussed. Lewis chased the dogs and picked up interesting stones, seemingly unaffected by news he was too young to fully comprehend. That evening, after a quiet dinner and board games by the fire, Kate tucked each child into bed with extra care. She read Charlotte an extra chapter from their current book, spent additional time helping Lewis with his bedtime routine, and had a longer conversation with George about his feelings and concerns. "Mummy," Charlotte said softly as Kate was turning off her bedside lamp. "Yes, sweetheart. Will you still be my mummy even after you go to heaven?" Kate sat back down on the edge of the bed, her heart aching at the question. "I will always be your mummy," she said firmly. "Nothing will ever change that. And even when I can't be here with you physically, I'll still be loving you and watching over you and feeling proud of all the amazing things you're going to do." "How will I know you're still there?" Kate thought for a moment. "Every time you see something beautiful and it makes you smile, every time you help someone who needs it, every time you feel brave when you're scared. That will be me, still being your mummy, still taking care of you in different ways." Similar conversations took place in each child's room that night, each one tailored to their age and personality, each one breaking Kate's heart while simultaneously filling her with pride at their resilience and love. Later, as she and William prepared for bed, Kate felt emotionally drained but also oddly relieved. The secret was out, at least within their immediate family. The children knew, and while they didn't fully understand everything yet, they had begun the process of adjusting to their new reality. "They're going to be okay," William said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "I know they will," Kate agreed, "because they have you, and because we're going to make sure they're prepared for whatever comes next. They're stronger than we sometimes give them credit for." As she lay in bed that night, listening to the familiar sounds of the old house settling around them, Kate felt a complex mixture of sadness and peace. The hardest conversation was behind them, and while there would be many more difficult moments ahead, she knew that they would face them together as a family. The children would remember this weekend not as the day their world fell apart, but as the day they learned that love is stronger than fear, that honesty is better than pretending, and that families can find ways to be brave together even in the face of unimaginable loss. The weeks following their conversation at Sandringham brought an unexpected sense of normalcy to their daily routine. Kate had worried that telling the children would change everything immediately, but instead, it seemed to free them all from the weight of unspoken fears. The children asked questions when they occurred to them, expressed their feelings more openly, and somehow seemed more present in their daily interactions with their mother. Kate threw herself into creating memories with an intensity that surprised even William. She arranged special outings that had previously been postponed due to royal obligations, spent hours working on photo albums that would preserve their family history, and began writing letters to each child that they could read in the future when they needed to feel close to her. The palace had quietly adjusted her schedule, reducing her public engagements while maintaining enough activity to avoid speculation about her health. Kate was grateful for this careful balance, as she wanted to continue her charitable work for as long as possible while also protecting her family's privacy during this vulnerable time. On a crisp December morning, Kate stood in her private office reviewing plans for what would become her final major royal engagement, a visit to a children's hospital where she would officially open a new wing dedicated to pediatric cancer treatment. The irony was not lost on her that her last significant public appearance would be in a place where other families were fighting the same type of battle she was losing. "Your Royal Highness?" Her private secretary, Miranda, appeared in the doorway with a concerned expression. "There's been a development we need to discuss." Kate looked up from the briefing paper she had been reviewing, immediately sensing from Miranda's tone that something significant had happened. Over the years, she had learned to read the subtle signs that indicated when palace staff were dealing with sensitive information. "What is it?" Kate asked, gesturing for Miranda to close the door and take a seat. "We've received word from one of our media contacts that a photographer managed to capture images of you leaving the oncology clinic yesterday. The photos aren't clear enough to prove anything definitively, but combined with the speculation about your reduced schedule, some journalists are beginning to ask direct questions about your health." Kate felt her stomach clench. She had been so careful about her medical appointments, using private entrances and unmarked vehicles, but she had known that eventually someone would notice a pattern or capture evidence of her frequent hospital visits. "How long do we have before this becomes public?" she asked, already beginning to think about how to handle the situation. "Days, possibly a week at most," Miranda replied. "The palace communications team believes we should consider making our own announcement before the story breaks without our input." Kate nodded, having anticipated this moment would come eventually. She and William had discussed various scenarios and had agreed that if the situation became public, they would control the narrative by being honest and direct about her condition while requesting privacy for their family. "Schedule a meeting with William and the communications team for this afternoon," Kate decided, "and please ask them to prepare a draft statement that we can review. If we're going to do this, we need to do it properly." The afternoon meeting took place in the small conference room adjacent to William's office, with only the most essential staff present. Kate appreciated that the palace team had learned over the years to keep sensitive discussions to the smallest possible group of people, understanding that leaks were often more damaging than the original information. We recommend a straightforward approach, the head of communications explained as she laid out several draft statements. Acknowledge the diagnosis, emphasize that treatment options are being pursued, request privacy for the family, and thank the public for their support. We avoid specific medical details while being honest about the seriousness of the situation. William read through the proposed statement, making minor adjustments to the language and tone. Kate appreciated that he was taking the lead on these practical matters, allowing her to focus her energy on the more important work of preparing their children and extended family for the public scrutiny that would inevitably follow. I want to add something about continuing my royal duties for as long as possible, Kate said, reviewing the text. People should know that this isn't the end of my work, just a different chapter. And I think we should mention that the children are a priority right now. When would you like to release this? The communications director asked. William and Kate exchanged glances, both knowing that once they crossed this threshold, their lives would change irrevocably. The speculation, the media coverage, the public sympathy, and the loss of what little privacy they still maintained would all become permanent features of their remaining time together. Friday afternoon, William decided. That gives us time to personally inform the extended family and close friends before it becomes public. And it means the children will have the weekend at home to adjust to the attention before going back to school. The next 2 days were spent making difficult phone calls and having painful conversations with people who had been part of their lives for years. Kate spoke personally with the heads of the charities she patronized, explaining that her involvement might need to be reduced, but assuring them of her continued support in whatever capacity she could manage. William contacted his closest friends and military colleagues, people who would undoubtedly hear the news from media sources if they weren't informed directly. The hardest conversation was with Catherine's parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, who had been an integral part of their children's lives and had supported Kate through every challenge of royal life. Michael wept openly on the phone, while Carol immediately began planning how she could spend more time helping with the grandchildren. "We're going to fight this together," Carol told her daughter firmly. "Whatever you need, whenever you need it, we're here." Kate felt grateful beyond words for her parents' unwavering support, knowing that their presence would provide stability and normalcy for George, Charlotte, and Louis during the difficult months ahead. Friday morning arrived with unusual December warmth, and Kate found herself standing in the garden watching the children play with their dogs before school. George was teaching Louis how to properly throw a tennis ball for the spaniels, while Charlotte sat on a bench nearby, working on a new watercolor painting of the scene. In a few hours, the statement would be released, and their private struggle would become public property. Every decision they made, every appearance Kate managed, every family outing would be analyzed and discussed by people around the world. The children would face questions from classmates, and their normal school routine would likely need additional security measures. "Are you ready for this?" William asked, joining her by the window. "As ready as anyone can be for something like this," Kate replied honestly. "I keep thinking about how different our lives were just a year ago, when our biggest concerns were scheduling conflicts and protocol questions. Do you regret any of it? The royal life, the public attention, giving up your privacy to marry me?" Kate turned to look at him, surprised by the question. "William, marrying you gave me the 3 most wonderful children in the world, allowed me to make a difference in areas I care deeply about, and brought me more happiness than I ever imagined possible. The public attention was the price we paid for an extraordinary life. I've never regretted a single day of it." The statement was released at 3 p.m., and within minutes, the palace phone lines were overwhelmed with calls from media outlets around the world. Social media platforms crashed briefly as millions of people shared and commented on the news. The gates of all their residences were surrounded by photographers and reporters, and the children had to be picked up from school through a private entrance to avoid the crowds. Kate watched the coverage that evening with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. The outpouring of support was immediate and overwhelming. World leaders issued statements expressing their support and admiration. The charities she had worked with shared stories of her impact on their causes. Ordinary people posted memories of meeting her at public events, describing her warmth and genuine interest in their lives. The hashtag Prayers for Kate is trending worldwide, Charlotte observed, looking at William's phone with fascination. At 9 years old, she was just beginning to understand the global reach of their family's influence. "People really love you, Mummy," Lewis said simply, curled up beside Kate on the sofa as they watched news coverage together. George was quieter, clearly processing the reality that his family's private pain was now being discussed by strangers around the world. "Will people always be watching us now?" he asked. "They were already watching us, darling," Kate explained gently. "Now, they're just doing it with more concern and kindness. Most people want to support our family during this difficult time." Over the weekend, flowers began appearing outside all of their residences. By Sunday, the gates of Kensington Palace were covered with bouquets, cards, stuffed animals, and handmade signs expressing love and support. Kate was deeply moved by messages from other families dealing with cancer, from children who had lost parents, and from people who simply wanted her to know that she had made a positive impact on their lives. "I want to go see them," Kate told William on Sunday afternoon, referring to the crowds of well-wishers who had gathered despite the cold weather. "I think it would mean something to them, and honestly, it would mean something to me too." William was hesitant, concerned about her energy levels and the emotional toll such an encounter might take. But he also understood Kate's need to connect with the people who had supported their family throughout their marriage. They arranged an impromptu walkabout with minimal security and no formal protocol. Kate wrapped herself in a warm coat and walked slowly along the crowds gathered outside their home, accepting flowers, hugging tearful supporters, and taking time to speak personally with as many people as possible. "Thank you for everything you've done for families like mine," one woman told Kate through tears. "My daughter was helped by your mental health initiative when she was struggling, and I know she's watching today and feeling proud that she got help when she needed it. You've shown all of us how to handle difficult situations with grace," an elderly man told her, pressing a handwritten note into her hands. "My wife and I have followed your family for years, and you've been an example to our own children and grandchildren." A little girl, perhaps 6 years old, broke free from her mother's grasp and ran toward Kate with a small bouquet of daisies. "These are for you, Princess," she said solemnly. "My mummy says you're sick, and flowers make people feel better." Kate knelt down to the child's level, accepting the flowers with genuine appreciation. "These are the most beautiful flowers I've ever received," she said softly. "What's your name?" "Emma," the little girl replied shyly. "Are you going to get better?" It was the question everyone wanted to ask, but most adults felt too polite to voice directly. Kate appreciated the child's honesty and directness. "The doctors are taking very good care of me," Kate replied carefully, "and having kind people like you sending me beautiful flowers definitely helps me feel better." Emma seemed satisfied with this answer and skipped back to her mother, who mouthed "thank you" to Kate with tears streaming down her face. The impromptu walkabout lasted nearly an hour, and by the end, Kate was physically exhausted but emotionally lifted by the genuine outpouring of love and support. She had always known intellectually that the public cared about their family, but experiencing that care in such a direct and personal way during her darkest period was profoundly moving. That evening, as they prepared the children for the school week ahead, Kate reflected on how much her perspective had changed in just a few days. The diagnosis had initially felt like something to be hidden, a private battle to be fought behind closed doors. But sharing their struggle with the world had somehow made it more bearable rather than more difficult. "The children seem to be handling this better than I expected," William observed as they watched George help Lewis with his reading homework, while Charlotte worked on thank you cards for some of the people who had sent gifts. "They're seeing that being vulnerable doesn't make you weak," Kate replied. "They're learning that asking for support and accepting help is actually a form of strength. Those are lessons that will serve them well throughout their lives, regardless of what challenges they face." As the week progressed, Kate settled into a new routine that balanced her treatment schedule with meaningful family time and carefully selected public engagements. She was surprised to discover that knowing her time was limited had the unexpected effect of making her more present and intentional in all her interactions. The children's teachers reported that all three were doing well academically and socially, though they were receiving extra support from school counselors to help them process their emotions about their mother's illness. Kate was grateful for the school's sensitivity and their commitment to maintaining as much normalcy as possible for her children. The public response continued to be overwhelmingly positive, with people from around the world sharing their own stories of loss, resilience, and family strength. Kate began to realize that their family's journey, as painful as it was, might ultimately serve as an example of how to face terminal illness with dignity and grace. She was no longer just the Duchess of Cambridge fighting a private battle with cancer. She had become a symbol of hope for families dealing with similar challenges, a reminder that love and courage can coexist with grief and fear, and a testament to the power of living fully even when time is running short. Spring arrived earlier than expected, and with it came a renewed sense of urgency that Kate felt in every aspect of her daily life. The cherry blossoms in Kensington Gardens bloomed magnificently, creating a backdrop of pink and white that seemed almost too beautiful for the sadness that had settled over their family. Kate spent long afternoons sitting beneath those trees, often with a book or her camera, but mostly just absorbing the beauty of a season she was no longer certain she would see again. The past 4 months have been a careful balance of treatments that provided little hope, but some comfort, family activities that created precious memories, and public appearances that allowed Kate to complete the work that had defined her adult life. She had lost weight, and her energy levels were unpredictable, but her spirit remained strong, fueled by the love of her family and the overwhelming support from people around the world. William had requested a leave of absence from his official duties, a decision that was immediately approved by his father and grandmother. Every day with Kate had become precious beyond measure, and he refused to spend that time fulfilling ceremonial obligations when his wife and children needed him most. The children had adapted to their new reality with the resilience that Kate had always admired in young people. George had become more thoughtful and protective, often helping with his younger siblings without being asked. Charlotte poured her emotions into her art, creating beautiful drawings and paintings that captured moments of joy and family togetherness. Louis continued to be their source of lightness, his innocent questions and observations providing moments of laughter even during the most difficult days. "Mummy, can we plant a garden this year?" Charlotte asked one morning as they walked through Hyde Park together. It had become their tradition to take daily walks when Kate felt well enough, sometimes just the two of them, sometimes with the whole family. "What kind of garden would you like to plant?" Kate asked, though they both knew that Kate might not be alive to see many flowers bloom. "I want to plant flowers that butterflies love," Charlotte replied seriously. "That way, when we look at the garden, we'll see beautiful things flying around, and it will make us happy." Kate's heart swelled with pride at her daughter's instinctive understanding that creating beauty and joy was one way to handle sadness. "I think that's a wonderful idea," she said. "We can research which flowers butterflies like best, and maybe Papa can help us prepare the soil." That afternoon, they spent hours in the library researching butterfly gardens, making lists of suitable plants, and sketching designs for their family project. William joined them, and soon they were deep in discussions about colors, planting schedules, and the practical aspects of creating a space that would bring them joy for years to come. "Even when I'm not here to see it," Kate said gently, "I'll love knowing that you three are out there together, watching butterflies and remembering how much fun we had planning this." It was the first time she had spoken so directly about her absence, and the children processed this in their different ways. George nodded seriously, understanding the finality implied in her words. Charlotte took her mother's hand and squeezed it tightly. Louis, not quite grasping the full meaning, simply asked if they could include sunflowers because they were his favorite. The garden project became a family obsession over the following weeks. They visited nurseries together, consulted with experts, and prepared the soil with the careful attention usually reserved for state affairs. Kate documented every step with her camera, knowing that these images would become treasured family history. Meanwhile, the public continued to follow their family's journey with compassion and respect. Kate had been surprised by how thoughtful most of the media coverage had been, focusing on her charitable work and family dedication rather than sensationalizing her illness. She suspected that William and the Palace Communications team had worked hard to encourage this respectful approach, and she was grateful for their efforts. Her final public engagement came in late April, a visit to the Children's Hospital where the new cancer treatment wing was being dedicated in her honor. Kate had initially resisted the idea of having a medical facility named after her while she was still alive, but William had convinced her that it would provide comfort to the families who would benefit from the services there. Standing before the small crowd of medical staff, hospital administrators, and patient families, Kate felt the weight of the moment. This would be the last time she would address the public in an official capacity, the final chapter of her career as a working royal. When I first learned about the work being done here, she began, her voice clear and strong despite the physical toll of recent weeks. I was struck by something one of the doctors told me. He said that hope isn't about denying reality or pretending that difficult situations aren't happening. Hope is about finding ways to make meaning and beauty and love even in the midst of the hardest circumstances. She paused, looking out at the faces before her, many of them familiar with the challenges she was describing. The families who will be served by this facility understand that truth better than most people ever will. They know that love doesn't stop when diagnosis begins. They know that creating positive memories and maintaining family bonds becomes even more important when time feels precious. They know that every day offers opportunities for grace and courage and joy, even when the overall situation feels overwhelming. Kate spoke about the importance of supporting not just patients, but entire families dealing with serious illness. She emphasized the need for psychological and emotional care alongside medical treatment. And she talked about the privilege she had felt in meeting so many brave children and families throughout her years of charitable work. I hope this facility will be a place where families feel supported in every aspect of their journey, she concluded. Where children feel safe and loved while receiving care, where parents find the resources they need to help their families cope, and where everyone remembers that even in the most difficult circumstances, we are not alone. The dedication ceremony was followed by a tour of the facility, during which Kate met with several young patients and their families. She was particularly moved by a conversation with 8-year-old James, who had been receiving treatment for leukemia for over a year. "My mummy says you're sick too," James told her directly, with the honesty that Kate had always appreciated in children. "Yes, I am," Kate replied simply. "It's kind of scary, isn't it?" James asked. "Sometimes it is," Kate agreed. "But having people who love us makes it less scary. And doing things that make other people feel better helps too." "Is that why you came to visit us?" "Partly," Kate smiled. "But mostly I came because meeting brave kids like you makes me feel better." James seemed satisfied with this answer and went back to coloring a picture that he insisted Kate should take home to show her own children. The drive home from the hospital was quiet, each member of the family processing the day in their own way. Kate felt emotionally drained, but also deeply satisfied. She had ended her public career by doing work that mattered, by connecting with people who understood her situation, and by contributing to something that would help families long after she was gone. May brought warmer weather and the completion of their butterfly garden. The entire family spent hours working together to plant the carefully chosen flowers, install small benches for sitting and observing, and create pathways that would make the space accessible and inviting. Kate's parents joined them for the planting day, along with William's father, who had driven down from London specifically to be part of the project. "This is going to be beautiful," Carol Middleton said, watching her grandchildren carefully water the newly planted seedlings. "Kate, you've given them something wonderful to tend, and enjoy together. Charles nodded in agreement, uncharacteristically emotional as he watched his son and grandchildren working together on something that would outlast the current crisis. Gardens have a way of teaching us about cycles and renewal, he observed. Even when we lose someone we love, the beauty they help create continues. As the weeks progressed, Kate's health declined more rapidly than anyone had anticipated. She spent most days in bed, though she insisted on having the children visit her room every morning before school and every evening after homework. These intimate conversations became precious to all of them, times when they could talk about everything from daily school events to deeper questions about life and death. "Will you still be able to watch over us when you're in heaven?" Lewis asked one evening as Kate helped him with his bedtime routine. "I will always be watching over you," Kate promised. "Every time you see a butterfly in our garden, every time you do something kind for someone else, every time you feel brave when you're scared, that will be me, still taking care of you. But how will I know for sure?" Kate thought carefully about her response. "Do you remember how sometimes when you're playing outside, you can feel the sun on your face even when you're not looking at it?" Lewis nodded. "Love is like that. Even when you can't see me, you'll be able to feel my love for you. It will always be there, warming you and making you feel safe." William spent these final weeks dividing his time between caring for Kate and preparing the children for what was coming. He arranged for professional counselors to work with all three children, help them create special memory books about their mother, and encourage them to ask questions about anything that worried or confused them. The extended family rallied around them with quiet support. Kate's parents practically moved into Kensington Palace, providing stability and comfort for the children. Charles visited daily, often just sitting with Kate and talking about family history, royal traditions, and the legacy she would leave behind. Even the Queen, despite her advanced age, made regular visits, understanding that these might be among the last intimate family moments she would share with her granddaughter-in-law. On a warm June morning, Kate woke feeling unusually clear and energetic. She asked William to help her get dressed and to arrange for all three children to come to her room before school. When they arrived, she was sitting in her favorite chair by the window, with the butterfly garden visible beyond the glass. "I want to tell you something important," she said, gathering them around her. "I can feel that my time with you is getting very short, and I want to make sure you know how proud I am of each of you." She spoke to each child individually, sharing specific memories and observations about their personalities, their kindnesses, and their potential. She reminded them of family stories they might want to remember, talked about the importance of taking care of each other, and emphasized how much their father loved them. "Promise me that you'll remember to look for joy even when you're sad," she said finally. "Promise me that you'll help each other and support Papa, and that you'll know that everything good and beautiful in your lives is something I want you to enjoy completely." George, Charlotte, and Louis each made their promises solemnly, understanding that they were participating in their final meaningful conversation with their mother. That evening, as William sat beside Kate's bed holding her hand, she reflected on the unexpected gifts that had come with her diagnosis. "I never imagined that knowing I was going to die would teach me so much about how to live," she said softly. "These past months have been the most intentional, the most present, the most grateful period of my entire life." "You've shown all of us what grace looks like," William replied. "The children will carry that with them forever." Kate died peacefully 3 days later, with William holding her hand and surrounded by the people who had loved her most. The children were at school, as she had requested, preferring that their final memory of her be from their morning conversation rather than from her death. The public response to her death was immediate and overwhelming. Millions of people around the world mourned a woman who had shown them how to face terminal illness with dignity, how to prioritize family relationships, and how to find meaning and purpose even in the most difficult circumstances. But perhaps the most beautiful tribute came 6 months later, when the butterfly garden bloomed in full splendor, and George, Charlotte, and Louis sat together on the bench their mother had helped them install, watching monarchs and Swallowtail's dance among the flowers she had chosen specifically to bring joy to the people she loved most.